Pigweed here. Today we review a porter and discuss the failure of public education. Hello. Here we are again.
Good
What
to
do
see
you know?
Pigweed. Hey, what do you think about some beer and conversation?
I think that's a great idea. Here we are at the Royal Oak
Tavern.
I wonder, what are we drinking?
Well, I made a special deal with Chesterton that I'll tell you about later. We're drinking a rye porter.
A rye porter.
Yeah.
Delicious.
All right. So, what's on your mind?
Well, I came across this chart the other day that I passed on to my sister, and it says that since 2000 to 2001, there have been an increase of the student population is 5%. The increase in the number of teachers is 10%. That's good. And that improves the ratio, right? Between the principals and assistants is 39%. It seems a little excessive.
Yeah.
And the principal's administrative staff is 95%. So I'd like to talk about that after I drink you this delicious beer.
Yeah. Okay. So let me tell you about this beer. So this is a homebrew, my homebrew. It's Good Friday Porter. It's a porter that has a pound of rye in the mash, and it's one of my most popular beers. And one
of your go-tos?
One of my go-tos. And Chesterton had a glass, and he liked it, and he's going to try to convince the Royal Oak to put it on the tap here. So, yeah.
Fine idea. Now, you're going to have to up your production a little bit. Yeah,
that's right.
5 gallons at a time might not
cut it. I think I'll just give them the recipe, and they'll have to brew it themselves. But
very good.
Yeah, so that's the idea.
But, no, it's delicious. I guess it's lost a little bit of carbonation on the transfer.
On the transfer into the growler, yeah.
It's perfectly. Yeah. It's a lovely beer. Everybody wants to know ABV.
It's around 5.5%.
Very
porterish.
Very in the range.
And I made this beer for a event recently. It was actually a cornhole tournament. I made this one in my California Common, and to my surprise, more of this was drunk than the California Common.
Well, there you have it.
Which you never know. All right, so
this conversation went like this. So I said to my sister, I said,
"Who's in education?"
Yeah, right. She's a teacher. She's a high school teacher. And I said, I said, why don't I know how to use my own
your own phone?
Yeah.
So you sent her this chart, the chart that shows the crazy numbers that you were telling us about.
And my thought is like, what's with all the administrators? I mean, exactly what are they doing? Mm-hmm. And so she lets me know what they're doing. She says, because no one wants to be in the classroom, and school systems keep creating administrative positions so teachers can get promoted and won't quit.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous. I said, so the ultimate goal for a teacher is now to not teach, to become an administrator?
Right.
He says, yes, because these positions actually pay better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Than actually doing the job of teaching. So people want to get out of teaching to not teach to make more money because she says it's the only way to make money, which is sad because good teachers leave the classroom.
Now, let's just think about that. Let's just think about this for a minute. Who wants the teachers? If the teacher is not going to be teaching,
they go into the job wanting to teach, right? I mean, that's
and then they get sick of it because the kids are rotten and they don't want to teach anymore.
They can't get rid of the bad kids,
right? So there's some person, some group, some organization somewhere that wants those people not to quit even though they're not teaching. Now, what organization would that be? The union.
Could it be the unions?
Because if you think about it, let's say you're an editorial organization and you have a bunch of writers, okay? And then a lot of people say, I don't want to quit, but I don't want to write anymore. And they say, we're going to make some new positions where you can still be employed, but not write.
Yes, you will be in charge of the other young writers who come in. And
you'll be in charge of
creating those positions.
Evaluating new word processing software or whatever it is. Who would do that?
Right.
The only person who would do that is an organization that wants more and more people on the rolls.
Paying dues,
and not achieving the goal, which is teaching.
Yes. So what I want to explore here is over the last 40 years, we have had an increased role of both government and unions. Yeah. And as those go up, performance goes down.
Yes.
And maybe this needs to be reevaluated.
Yeah. So I have some relatively simple statistics here on how this goes. In the 1960s, the U.S. was generally considered a leader in education. Okay. In the 1970s, and it combines the 70s and 80s, which I think is a mistake, because in the 70s, the U.S. continued to excel in access and enrollment, but saw rising concerns about educational quality. And U.S. students in math and science were beginning to lag behind countries like Japan. So we started to see a decline in the 70s and 80s. We were still near the top, but we started to see a decline. And that's when we saw the 1983 report, A Nation at Risk.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Okay.
Familiar.
And that's because of that concern, they created the Department of Education in 1979. Okay. So after the Department of Education, now we get into the 90s. U.S. students performed around the international average in math and science. So we went to being leaders near the top to being average. And U.S. educational performance was middle of the pack compared to other industrialized nations.
Right.
In the 2000s, U.S. students scored near the average in reading and science, but below average in math.
I mean, the average of who?
Industrialized nations.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Not
We're not comparing ourselves to
Malawi.
Yeah, right. So in 2010, U.S. students generally scored below average in math and closer to average in reading and science, but not average. 2020s, in reading and science, the U.S. is slightly above the industrialized country average, but remains below average in math. So what we've seen is the country go from near the top to middle of the pack in the
I
last
saw
few decades.
some numbers that we were like 39th in math. We're supposed to be the engineering innovators
Right.
of the world. I'm surprised that we still are. I guess we just have fewer people. I don't know.
Well, I think the reason is both those things can be true.
Yeah,
is because even though the average number of people don't do math very well, you still have some people who are exceptional. So you have the top of the curve. We still have people who are very, very smart at the top of the curve.
Right, and we're not completely getting in their way.
Yeah. Yes.
Completely.
Yeah. So fortunately, we're not like requiring science companies to hire people who do poorly in math out of equity.
Yeah. Well,
not yet.
Not with DJT.
Not with Donald J. Trump in office. So, yeah, what we've seen in education is we've seen a lot more concern. We've seen a lot more money being spent, but we haven't seen an increase in performance.
So, speaking of which, this is Michigan, just as a sample.
Yeah.
This is not from 1974. This is from 2013. So it's very recent to 2022. The money spent per student is up 28%, and the performance in reading and math looks like it's a drop of about 3%.
Okay.
So that's
bad money poorly spent.
Yes, the return on investment.
And there seems to be zero correlation between spending money and getting better results.
Because has there ever been an election cycle, particularly from the Democrat side, where the Democrat is running on more money for schools? It's always our students are lagging behind. We need more money.
We need more money.
And that's always going to be the answer.
And there's no evidence that it
There's
does
no
anything.
correlation at all. The numbers from Detroit. This was from Detroit. From Detroit, from Baltimore, from Cleveland. The ones that have the highest numbers. The percentage of students in Detroit who performed at or above the national education proficient level was 4%.
Wow.
In Baltimore, we had
one student who was actually proficient.
We had 13 schools out of 39 with 0 students proficient in math. Digging further, we had 6 high schools that tested 1%. So now we're at 3,804 students took the test. 14 students were proficient in math, and on this list is the school that my son would have gone to if I hadn't moved out of the city.
Wow.
1%.
1%. That's bad odds.
And now
let's throw some more money at it. That'll solve it.
Let's throw some more money at it.
Yeah.
Is that the problem?
Maybe if we give them golden math books, that'll solve it. Or if we instead of giving them a math book, we give everybody a laptop and an iPad and something else, that'll solve it. No, what solves it is
Accountability.
Kids, yeah. Well, for one thing, kids showing up at school. There's a huge problem in Baltimore of kids just plain not going to school.
Oh, yeah. And this was... So I saw some recent numbers about the improvement, but it's the improvement over the COVID years.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, so you don't learn anything for 2 years, and now kids are starting to learn things, and you're going to claim...
that you've done some great thing. That's right.
Give me like a 10-year...
Right. Yeah. So we have this problem of increasing spending on administrators, and then the question becomes, who are these administrators? And so one thing that's a common complaint that both homeschoolers and people who promote private schools,
right,
the complaint that they have is, look, you guys are spending $22,000 per student and getting lousy results. We're spending $3,000 per student and getting much better results. So Bill Bennett, remember him?
Yeah.
He did, I heard him on this program one time, and he did this evaluation where they compared like a Catholic archdiocesan school to an equivalently sized public school district.
Right.
And compared,
money spent
per student,
results and such,
and all that kind of stuff. And what he found was that the huge differentiator was the money spent on the administrators. And his question at the time was, what are they doing? They can't all be handing out condoms, right? Like what are all these administrators doing?
Yeah.
And I think the thing is, what part of what they're doing is they're doing paperwork in response to federal regulations. That's at least part of what they're doing. Huh. The Department of Education has said you have to fill out this form, you have to fill out this form, you have to comply with this, you have to comply with this.
You need administrators to take care of that.
Yeah, all this administrative overhead, where the Catholic schools don't have that. They're spending, they're spending less money on that junk, but they're spending more money on teachers and whatnot. Although Catholic school teachers get paid dirt, they don't get paid very well.
There's that,
yeah.
And they're not in a union, and that was the first part or the second part of the equation is what roles unions love those positions.
Yeah, yes,
they have to.
Yeah,
high paid, dues paying.
Yes,
not with no accountability.
Yes. But still faithful members of the union, so the union's still getting its money.
Right. And who are all voting Democrat.
Yeah. And what the union wants is more well-paid people in their ranks. That's their goal.
Right.
Their goal has nothing to do with better education. It has to do with
that's
more.
Not right.
Yeah. They don't, whether education is better or worse doesn't affect the union.
No, they are right. They argued for closing down schools.
Yeah.
They loved it.
Yeah.
Because now these teachers who didn't want to be there anyway are happy as they can be, sitting at home. Students are learning nothing. And they're like, well, whether or not the students learn or not, that's not our job. Our job is to protect teachers.
Yes.
Who, no matter how, and no matter, even if they're terrible, don't show up to work.
And the truth of the matter is they're not protecting teachers. They're protecting administrators.
Right, because that's where all the increase...
what they always say is, we're protecting the teachers. We want to pay teachers. No, you don't. You want to pay the administrators more. So the school we went to, when we were there, the high school, there was a principal and a vice principal. And
then you had a counselor for each grade.
Yes.
And and that counselor in 9th grade followed you through to the 12th grade.
That's right.
Well, so that's what I asked my sister about it. I'm like, who else is there? You got five administrators and some office staff, secretaries and phone answers and stuff.
So one of the Crowhill clan went to the same high school that we went to. Right. And when he was going there, which was, more than 10 years ago, there was a vice principal for every grade.
Okay, so that's
9th, 10th, 11th,
so that's an increase of 4.
Yeah. So and then you.
But it's not an increase of 95%.
No. Yeah, you also had a vice president or vice principal exclusively for security.
Yeah, all right.
And then I think I'm not sure about this, but I think they had vice principals in charge of each division. Like, remember, you had to be in science and tech, or you had to be in engineering, or you had to be in whatever, right?
So there's probably an administrator over the 3 gym teachers.
Yeah.
Right. So
yeah. Now then, the other thing that in order to give the public education system a little bit of slack here is a lot of times private school and homeschool people will say, look, you're spending all this money, you're not getting any results. And they'll say, wait a minute, we have to take anybody who comes in the door.
Fair.
Whether they're dumb as dirt, whether they have horrible disabilities, whether they have various kinds of things. And then we have to hire all these aides to come in and be one-on-one with that. So that's a fair criticism. I get that. And that does increase the cost.
I'll give it to you. I'll give it to you. But they also, this is before equity was equity. This is the precursor to equity.
Yeah.
Was that a disproportionate number of non-white students were being suspended for disciplinary problems.
Yeah.
And so they decided, since you can't just start disciplining kids who haven't done anything, so it's like, we're not going to discipline kids anymore.
Right.
And so now you have all of the disruptors have to be in class. They can't be sent to special schools.
Right.
And that just declines the expectations and the classroom environment and for all the rest of the students.
Right. Yeah, because you can have 19 orderly, decent kids and one troublemaker, and it ruins the whole class.
And nobody learns anything that day because it's all, you only got 40 minutes for spelling or whatever, and it's all taken up with the
kid who's throwing stuff and causing trouble. Yeah, and
So that I think that tilted things in the wrong way.
That is a problem because you need to be able to get that kid out of the class and do something with him, and yeah, that is a big problem. Now, so another part of the problem here is the decline in the family, because the idea that the school itself can solve all these problems, if the kid is not getting 3 square meals at home, getting a decent night's sleep, the parents helping out a little bit with.
He didn't do his homework.
Right.
He didn't bring his glasses.
Right.
He didn't get enough sleep.
Yeah. So, how can the school system can't make gold out of straw? And if you're sending kids into school who, their parents never read to them.
There's not a book in the house.
There's not a book in the house, right? That's another big part of the problem is the breakdown of the family, where you don't have kids growing up in an environment where they value education.
All right. So in a sense, this is another excuse, or not excuse, another point in favor of it's not public education's fault entirely.
Right.
Because
we're not going to blame everything on some, but not everything. Because there are other factors that have contributed to the decline in education.
I like this one here. So this is somebody so mad about calls for getting rid of the Department of Education.
Yeah.
She says, by the way, middle schoolers can't read, high schoolers can't write a proper essay, college students can't differentiate a scholarly-based article versus propaganda, and adults can't tell when a picture is AI. But sure, get rid of the Department of Education. And the response to the guy was, when you're trying to save the Department of Education, but accidentally make the case for its elimination. Right?
That's right.
Why
are all these things true? The Department of Education has done nothing to solve these things for the entirety of its existence.
Look, everything's gotten worse since we've had the Department of Education. Oh, and you want to get rid of the Department of Education? How does that make sense? No, I'm not saying it's a one-for-one correlation, but certainly you're not making the case very well.
No. Federal involvement. You do have this concept of there should be some competition. Maine should do things a certain way, Iowa should do things a certain way, and then we learn, okay, the Maine way worked better, right? And then, so there should be, to some extent, various laboratories of education, just like this.
So let me make the case for the Department of Education.
Okay.
Then with that, there needs to be a national standard by which these two states Maine and Alabama, can compare themselves. And so if we have a standard, most students should do long division by 3rd grade. Mm-hmm. They should, or whatever the numbers are, right? Yep. So you have a standard, and then at the end of the day, like, wow, Alabama really needs to go talk to people in Maine and find out if what they're doing up there is better. Otherwise, I don't want federal control over all that, where everybody's taught the same thing according to the federal levels, but to say, you can all do it your own way. But this is what we expect 9th graders to know.
Yeah.
I think that's fair.
Well, I think it's fair in the abstract. I don't think it's constitutional, because the Constitution doesn't give the federal government any right to mess with education whatsoever. And also, I don't think it has to be the government.
It doesn't force the standard. It just says we're going to provide the test. Go ahead.
Yeah. obviously there has to be some way to measure outcomes. I'm just not sure the federal government has to be involved in that. You're right that there has to be some way to know that Maine is doing better than Alabama, right? I don't know that the federal government has to do that.
Well, I don't know how you wouldn't have the federal government. Can there be a national organization that is not under the federal?
Well, what
purview?
homeschoolers do is they just give their kids the Iowa tests. All homeschoolers all over the country, not all of them, because they can do whatever they want,
right,
but most homeschoolers give their kids the Iowa tests to see how they're stacking up, to make sure that they're doing things decently well. So, I mean, it's
interesting because I remember a comparison talking about money. Does money make the difference?
Yeah.
And it showed the 100% inverse of school districts, that the most money was spent on D.C. with the lowest numbers. The least amount of money was spent on Iowa with the best numbers.
Right.
But, of course, there are a lot of social factors you have to take into account.
Yes.
I mean, so you can't just say that. But what also thing you can't say is money equals results.
Yes.
So let's take that off the table.
Right.
The other part, yes, I agree. You have other social factors that complicate the comparison.
Yeah. So I was thinking, like, what are some arguments against this concept of federal government, Department of Education running education? So one is adding unnecessary bureaucracy, which goes into that chart that you showed, right? Another is a one-size-fits-all approach, like No Child Left Behind mandated things being done a certain way. You talked about Common Core before. So saying that you have to do it a certain way, that limits increases. What you just said is that spending does not result in better education.
Right.
The DOE has enabled or encouraged the promotion of progressive ideologies in public schools. No question about that. Kids are getting taught that the most important thing they can do in life is be an activist.
Yeah.
Not like to learn anything. Focus on standardized testing and teaching to the test. Bolstering teachers' union, and then diminishes the role of parents and local communities. And the bottom line criticism of Department of Education is just that it hasn't given any results. I mean, the bottom line thing is we created this thing to improve education, and it hasn't done it.
Yeah. So small town Ohio has a rat problem, so a Department of Rodent Control is set up for 4 years, $50,000 a year. At the end of 4 years, the rodent problem is worse.
Yeah.
What is the result of the government?
Pay more money.
Yes, we need to double down on the thing, right?
Yeah, that's what they always do.
That's what they always do. And what they need to go is, you know what? Maybe we need to
that was the wrong approach.
We'll contract it to somebody else, and if the rodent problem doesn't improve, we put the bid back up and we get somebody else who will try that, or something like that.
How about if we have like a department of promoting cats?
I mean, there's a variety of things, but it's always going to be with the government. We didn't get enough money. We need to do more of what is failing with twice the money, and then we'll show you. And now the bureaucracy is so big that it's too big to fail. It's too big to get rid of.
Yes. Nobody ever stops and says, hey, wait a minute. Maybe that was the wrong way to approach this.
Yeah. No, it's never that way.
So what is this faded yellow piece of paper you have in front of me here?
Yeah, this is I don't know exactly where this is from. It said it was from a one-room schoolhouse, and it might be, but this is a 1912 8th grade examination for Bullitt County schools. I don't know where that is, but it's got arithmetic, grammar, geography, physiology, civil government history. Pick anything from any topic here and see if you can imagine an 8th grader.
Well, here's a very current one. What is a personal pronoun?
Oh gosh, all right, let's move on.
Okay, define longitude and latitude.
That's nice.
Locate the Erie Canal. What waters does it connect, and why is it important?
All right, how about How does the liver compare in size with other glands in the human body? Where is it located, and what does it secrete?
Wow. Okay.
That's
a good one.
Really nice.
How many steps, 2 feet 4 inches each, will a man take in walking 2.25 miles?
No, never happened. You can't. No way. If you put that on a police exam,
Yes.
that wouldn't happen. By whom were the following settled? Georgia, Maryland, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Florida.
Wow. I don't know that.
That's a history question.
Name the last battle of the Civil War, War of 1812, French and Indian War, and the commanders in each battle.
Okay, so let's just say there's been a serious decline,
Yes.
and this is without any departments of anything,
Yeah.
and probably with one teacher teaching all 12 grades,
Right.
or something.
That's right.
You know,
And they still had to run home in time to bring in the cows. And
right. They didn't work in the reason that the school system has the calendar it does is because the kids were
working on farms.
Kids were working on farms. They had to
That's
bring in the harvest.
That's right. Yeah. So okay. So I think it's pretty clear that people are not educated as well today as they used to be. I mean, good grief! Just watch the videos from TikTok, and you'll know in an instant how stupid people are.
Or the man on the street.
Yeah.
Just going. I mean,
Right.
so literally, like, why are there 50 stars on the flag? And college graduates were.
I know.
As one guy said, the number of laws we have.
What country borders the United States to the north?
No, it's that simple.
It is that simple.
And it's that offensive. In 1912, in the Bullitt County, would have no problem with that.
But you know what they do know?
What?
They do know why they need to pick their own personal pronouns.
Yes.
They do know
why we have to have unlimited abortions.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. They know all this progressive BS, but they don't really know anything.
So this kind of, between the couple of charts that I came across and the discussion of the elimination of departments, reducing the size of government, Newt Gingrich talked about getting rid of the Department of Education.
Yeah.
And it's a very popular thing to say, and it gets zero traction.
Yeah.
And it's probably not going anywhere.
Probably
but
not.
I'm not even sure what they're doing, except for giving out money. Let me see. I've got some.
They're giving out money to people who are doing things their way. Is that the deal?
Well, it's like, it's not entirely partisan here. Remember when Ronald Reagan said, raise the drinking age to 21 or you don't get Department of Transportation money.
Right.
So the government, the federal government, takes money from taxpayers who all live in states and says, I'll give the Ohioans and the Marylanders their money back if they behave in this way according to the federal government.
Yeah, and that's
so
wrong.
in principle, I'm not so crazy about that.
Right.
But what, something like if you don't, in Arkansas in the 1960s, if you don't integrate your classes, the federal government is going to step in and make some differences here.
Right. Well, that's a very interesting comparison, because on the one hand, you're saying we want you to do some arbitrary thing that we think is better. On the other hand, we want you to do something that the federal Constitution requires. Right? Like,
I see.
If you say you have to integrate your classrooms, that's because the Constitution doesn't allow us to discriminate between races. But if you want to say you have to raise the drinking age from 18 to 21, the Constitution has nothing to say about that. Yeah. The federal government has no particular interest in that question. So I think it's important to distinguish those things.
That's a very good point. What about say Title IX? Okay. That's a federal. Is it? Where does that fall in?
Yes. So that's.
It's a federal law.
Yeah, and what it says is that you have to spend as much money on women's sports as men's sports, right? Which, first of all, I think is stupid.
Oh, it's stupid because they don't bring in basketball and football fund those colleges.
I'm absolutely in favor.
But I love the idea
Yeah.
of of encouraging everybody.
Yes, to play sports.
To play sports.
Absolutely.
It teaches
sports,
so many things.
Yes.
Well beyond. None of these people are going to become professional field hockey players.
Yes.
But the discipline, working as a team. I mean, there's so many positive things about being on a team, on a sports team.
Absolutely, and I'm absolutely in favor of women's sports, and nothing I'm about to say should take away from that. Women's sports are great. Everybody should play sports. However, it's just stupid to think that the general public is going to want to watch women's sports as much as they want to watch men's sports.
Yes.
It's also stupid to think that women want to do sports as much as boys want to do sports.
Yeah.
Because boys are more competitive. It's just the way it is. And trying to pretend that it's not that way, you can't change that with a law. Just because you pass this stupid thing called Title IX doesn't change the fact that boys are more physically aggressive than girls, and boys are more competitive than girls. It's just the way it is.
Right. But once we've accepted Title IX since the 1970s, then you have an administration that steps in and says, "Oh, by girls, we also mean boys."
Right.
So that's where the federal oversight is a disaster.
Yes. Yes, and where the federal government can come in and do some stupid thing. Now, did Biden actually try to change that?
Yes.
Yes? Okay.
So, thank you, DJT.
Another reason to get rid of that idiot.
We'll take care of that.
Mm-hmm.
But the other the problem with providing these federal grants is that then some jackass down the road will try to get votes by eliminating the debt.
Yeah.
So if you got your loan from anybody but the federal government, you're not getting your.
Yeah. What really needs to happen is we need fewer people in college, because for one thing, college
or diverting some of this money to trade schools.
Sure. Yes. Because college is supposed to be for the intellectual elite, like the top. Let's say, just for the sake of argument, the top 20% in terms of IQ. That's what college is really supposed to be. Or let's say top 40%. I don't care.
Right.
Some top. It's not supposed to be something that everybody is going to go into.
And then you just create programs that low IQ people can succeed in.
Yeah. And what's the good of that? All you've done is wasted 4 years of their life where they could have been learning to be a great bricklayer or something. Yeah.
Something that we need.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, education needs to be rethought on multiple different levels, but the federal control of education
and the union
control. Both of those things.
I mean, there should be public sector unions of all kinds need to go.
Yeah.
Because, in the printing union, they sit down with the owners. The owners open up their books. They say, "This is what we can afford. If you ask too much, then you're gonna put us out of business, and nobody will have a job." That's how normal unions work. But if if the person that you're negotiating with is spending taxpayer dollars, what incentive does he have to say that's too much? We can't afford that. When it's just like, well, this is a Ponzi scheme. How about this? We'll give you 15% raises. You put money into the Democratic,
right?
Yeah. For the people in charge who are Democrats now. Help get them elected, and then we'll give you what you want. And the public is going, the taxpayers go, well, where do we fit in this whole thing?
That's right. And so we have to add one last thing on this, I think, which is the experience that parents had during COVID of finally seeing what's actually going on in the classrooms.
Yeah.
And there was this universal revulsion of, wait a minute, this is what you do in school?
Yeah.
This is what we're sending our kids to school to learn this garbage?
Right. Would there be room for the federal government to say, probably not, but put it out there, at least locally, this should happen. Whether there's a federal role, you tell me. You need to put online everything that you're teaching my kid.
Yeah. Well,
is that just that has to be at state level?
Well, okay. So there's two ways to look at that kind of a question. One is conceptually, and one is constitutionally. Okay. So conceptually, I would say...
Yeah, on principle.
On principle, I would say absolutely, because the parents are the primarily responsible for the kids. So whatever these people are doing behind closed doors in the schools, yes, the parents have to have access to that. In principle, absolutely. Now, constitutionally, I don't know how you would justify that as a federal role.
Right. But you could ask the federal government could pressure the states.
Yes.
To say you guys need to have that, because the states could do that.
Yes, the states could do that. Because
maybe that's the way to go.
Maybe that's the way to go. I don't know. But yeah, absolutely, the parents should know what the idiots are teaching their kids in school.
All right. Well, we don't want indoctrinated and dumb kids who will eventually be running this country.
Who will eventually be crying on TikTok.
Crying on TikTok with Legos and crayons. Good God.
Cheers. Thanks so much for listening to Beer and Conversation with Pigweed and Crowhill. Remember to visit us at pigweedandcrowhill.com or send us an email at pigweedshow@gmail.com.